to deliberate about a matter, or a matter that's subject to TI deliberation specifically, would be, say, filing a legal brief. You get to research, learn about all the different relevant things before you start writing your brief. You get to write your entire brief. You get to anticipate what they might say and put in all the answers and stuff to it. And then you take your turn. Here's my brief. So that's a deliberation action kind of approach to life. That's particularly a TINE approach. TINE projects that frame of reference onto the world, such that it behaves as though people who are TINE behave as though there's never any urgency to do anything, that the world's just waiting for them to finish their deliberation and take their turn. Hence SE polar. When you're a deliberator who has as the other function the action function of turn-based action, NE, instead of real-time action, SE, then you get somebody who's SE polar. If they're a deliberator first and then take action on a turn-based level, they are SE polar. So, which is more correct? Are they TI Dom NE or are they SE polar? They mean the same thing. Well, polar doesn't mean not human any longer. So we all have a certain amount of machine code capacity in every function. Even though somebody's NI polar, they can still tell that this is a remote when they look at it like this, or like this, or like this. They still have baby level NI at least, right? I mean, let's talk about SI and NI. SI and NI link to two proto-cognition things, namely object permanence and shape constancy. Object permanence is a frame of reference that relates that stuff outside of you links to you. So object permanence is exemplified by me knowing where I put mya, okay? Because mya exists in relation to my actions with it. Shape constancy is the opposite. It tells us, regardless of my perspective on this thing, it's still the same thing. So if we didn't have any intuition at all, we wouldn't be able to tell what this thing was until we'd seen it from every single possible angle, which we never would, so we'd always be somewhat unsure about what it was. But because we have intuition, which is so you are changing position on the definitional class in which the concept of function falls? No, I'm very consistent in all my arguments, Stuart. I'm sorry you're making that misconception. Well, I'm not sorry about it. You should be sorry you're making that misconception. I'm extremely consistent about all of my understandings and the metaframes, which is to say I explain things through multiple frames, but I also explain that I'm explaining it through a different frame now, which of course nobody else does. Yeah, shape constancy. So these are things that psychology already knows that infants develop sometime shortly after birth. And there have been plenty of tests to establish these two things. And you can see clearly how they link the individual to objects in a different way. Do you think an SI DOM or an NI DOM would have the advantage for the first time they go to an escape room? I mean, NITE would have an advantage. I don't think NIFE would. I don't think INFJs would be particularly good at escape rooms. But I guess it depends on how the escape room is set up. If it involves social calculations, I guess INFJs would be good at it. Is it a pair of ways of classing humans in 8 classes, or a series of attentional matters which are equivalent to a list of 8 skills tests? is what that? Is what that, Stuart? That's totally wrong, Sean O'Neill. TE is, in fact, figuring out things that have their own logic, whereas TI is about the universal logic of communication and is predicated on particularly 5 terms, and, or, if then, if and only if, and not. TE figures out the logic that each thing has that when it has its own logic, when it's not a universal logic. Okay, well again, Stuart Johnson, you're mistaking the metaphor, the irrational number, for the thing itself, right? Remember that polar is your relationship between your second function and the other kind of that function. But that these functions don't exist except as expressions of people. So when you try to render them into objects of analysis, you need to recall that you can't expect those objects of analysis to retain the reality of people. You have to go back down to people again. Do you understand what I'm saying? So yes, I will speak with this 8-function metaphor to explain things, and that doesn't make me wrong or metaphorical in my understanding because I'm using it to explain things. Do you understand that? Okay, so look, as I've explained before, the 8-function model is a metaphor. It's like an irrational number in math. People really are a singular expression of a relationship with 2 kinds of being, okay? So they're a relationship between intuition and sensing, and they're a relationship between deliberation and interface. Because I'm 6'4", I have to duck to go under small doorways. And I'm more likely to hit my head on the thing, on the top, right? But that doesn't make it impossible for me to go through small doorways. So it's kind of like that. Being right-handed, remember there are a finite number of hours in the day, okay? Being right-handed means I consistently, reflexively use my right hand in certain situations. Definitionally, therefore, I use my left hand in an alternate way, right? So when we're talking about my left hand, and you're saying, but I thought you said you were right dominant, you're missing the point, right?